Hi, everyone. My name is Evan Frazier. I'm the CEO and founder of Tekwise Financial Planners. We help individuals and families create plans to get them their time back so that they can do the things that they really love and spend the time with the people that they want to. So today we're going to be talking about how to understand credit reports and scores. This training was created in conjunction with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and we'll also include a link at the end that will give you access to some of their other really great tools to use as you see fit. Well, I think a lot of people don't realize is that there are a lot of different types of businesses that actually report to the credit report company. I think most people think it's just going to be, oh, my credit card or my car payment or things like that. But actually, any place that you're making payments to on something can and probably does report to the credit reporting agencies. Cell phone bills, insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, life insurance. A lot of those companies are tracking and reporting whether you make payments on time. This is also a lot of different companies out there that report for different things. So a lot of people think just, oh, credit reports for loans, but actually they're credit reporting agencies that report on employment, that report on background checks. There's even one that builds credit reports and sells them to casinos to see on the clients that come to casinos. So it's not just credit cards and loans. There's a lot of different companies out there, and you can actually see a list if you go to this website as well. So a lot of people will say, hey, I'm not planning on getting a loan anytime soon, or I've already have a mortgage. What do I care about my credit report and scores? Well, they actually affect a lot of things outside just loans and mortgages and things like that. A lot of times employers will look at credit reports, especially if you have one where you're working for the government or you have any type of security clearance. That can be really important to keep those accurate and in good shape, so they can have job implications around that. If you're trying to lease an apartment, get any type of insurance, like car insurance, life insurance, renters insurance, homeowners, whatever, a lot of times those insurance companies are using and basing decisions off of your credit reports. Anytime you're trying to set up for utilities or renegotiate cell phone bills, they're going to be looking at credit reports. So it's important that we are monitoring and making sure that we're getting the best scores that we can. So what goes into a credit report? Well, these credit report companies collect all types of information around people. How much debt they have, what kind of debts they are, have you been late, things like that. And they combine all that information in these reports that have been sold back to businesses. Now, the three nationwide ones, the main ones that most people do know about are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So a credit report contains 5 sections. Typically, it starts out with identifying information. So I'll have like your name, address, social security number, date of birth, things like that. It'll also have public record information. So if you've ever declared bankruptcy or you've ever had a civil court case brought against you and had to pay out because of a civil court. It'll also have the collection agencies. If any of your debt has ever been charged off, sent to collections, that information will be there as well. And then this will be probably the biggest part. It'll be a list of all the account information for any credit cards, utilities, phone bills, things like that you have, car loans, and it'll tell them everything about it. Basically, are you current? How much are you paying? How much did you owe? How much is left? And just about anything that you could want to know about that particular account is going to be included in that account section. Lastly, they're going to have inquiries that have been made into your account. So this is typically divided up into 2 parts, the hard pull and the soft pull. So a hard pull is typically when you're looking to get information on whether you can get a loan. So they're going to be looking at, how good is your credit, things like that. And that will have an impact on your credit score. Typically, it's recommended that if you know you're going to be shopping for a larger purchase, like a car or a mortgage, to try and get qualified all at the same time, typically within a couple of weeks. So that way they're all kind of scheduled together. If you have lots of them spread out, it looks like you're constantly trying and getting rejected for loans. But they can tell that if you did it all at once, then it just looks like, all right, he's shopping to see getting the best deal or rate. A soft pull has no effect on your credit report or credit score. Soft pull could be because, hey, I'm opening up a new bank account and they just want to make sure that I don't owe a bunch of, bad debts or something like that. Or it could be, hey, credit card company's trying to decide, should I market to this person? And they're going to do a soft pull, see that information, even though you didn't ask for it. They're just looking to see that. That's where you get like a lot of those, hey, you're pre-approved. Those are coming from the soft pulls that you see on the credit report. So in general, negative information typically is not going to stay on the report for more than 7 years. Now, bankruptcies can stay on for up to 10 years. Civil suits, judgments from court cases and things like that will typically either be the longer of 7 years or the statute of limitations in your specific area, which can differ state to state. Now, other things that aren't necessarily negative information but can stay on the report for longer is larger credit amounts, like over $150,000, life insurance, large amounts of life insurance, or jobs that have higher salaries. That information can stay on longer. Again, not necessarily negative, but you will see the reports on this. So the three major reporting agencies are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They each have their own different presentation format, but I'm going to go through kind of quickly and show you what a potential example might look like and what those 5 different parts are. Typically, you're going to see at the very beginning your personal information. That's where they're going to have your name, social security number, addresses of places you've lived, all that information. They'll also have information about where it's been reported that you work and how long you've been there. Next, we'll usually come into the public records. So this is something that you want to make sure it's accurate, because we see mistakes around this place, especially if you have a common name. I'll give you an example out of my own life. When I first pulled my credit report at age 20, my dad and I had very similar first names. And since we lived at the same address for so long, they had actually attributed some of his credit cards to me, which actually made it look really great because he always paid them on time. But I had to at that time call and just say, hey, we have similar first names. That's not really mine. Here, check the socials. And they took his information off of my report. So you want to make sure and go through, is that really accurate? You don't want to leave inaccurate stuff on there because you will be getting dinged for those bad reports. Same for the collection side. We'll start listing things that's been in collections. These can also be very blank if you don't have anything in those areas. Now, this is usually the longest part. We'll have all the different account information, like the balances, what the original amounts were, what the terms were, what type of loan it was, when you paid on time and things like that. It has a really kind of in-depth amount for each account that you have. Now, lastly, we'll probably typically list the hard and soft pulls so you can start to see, oh yeah, I was house shopping or car shopping. That makes sense. For the soft pulls, you may or may not have requested those. They don't have an impact on your credit score. Not a big deal. So 3 of the ones that I would say, some terms that kind of be confusing that I just want to call out here is a charge off. So if a business does decide to charge off one of your accounts, meaning they don't think that they can collect that money from you or they don't want to try and collect that money from you anymore, you're going to be handing that off to a debt collector. Sometimes people think that a charge off means that you don't have to pay the debt anymore, but that's not true. It just means that business was no longer collecting on it and it's been handed off to a debt collector who can try and collect on it. Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, bankruptcies. They're sometimes kind of confusing and used interchangeably, but they are 2 very different types. Chapter 7 is probably the one that most people are familiar with, where you go in, say, hey, I don't have enough money to pay everybody. They sell off your assets to pay that down, and then whatever debt's left after that is given away to, or is just charged off and nobody can collect on it. Chapter 13 is just really working out a payment plan. So you've gone to the creditor and said, look, I'm having a hard time paying you, and I want to renegotiate payment terms, as a way to stave off Chapter 7. Chapter 13, you're still going to owe amounts on it, but you're using the courts to kind of force a better payment plan option to get that debt taken care of. So disputing errors is going to be something that's very important. because all those errors can lead to lower credit scores, which means higher interest rates and more costly loans when you are ready to apply and need loans, like mortgages, things like that. Okay. You'll have two ways to go about submitting that dispute. You can do it online, or you can do it by mail. If you do it by mail, you're going to want to make sure that you send it with return mail requested and a delivery receipt. Also, do not ever send the original copies or originals. Just send copies of any information that you have that you're trying to dispute. Okay. So actually here we've created a review checklist. After the meeting today, it'll be emailed out to you and you'll be able to use these checklists. But it's just an easy way to kind of look through and say, okay, is everything on my credit report correct? This checklist can help you kind of go through that and make sure that that looks all correct. Now, when you're ready to dispute something, you want to make sure and see, is it incorrect at all three, or is it only incorrect at one place? Because it just may be that it's only been reported incorrectly at one place. Given put up here on the report, and I'll give you a copy of this at the end, is how to get to their dispute resolutions. You can again make it really easy to do it online, but you can also do it by mail as well. There is a process to filing these disputes and some timelines. Whether you file the dispute with either the person reporting it or the credit reporting company, they each generally have about 30 days to investigate the claim. However, if you send them any new information, then they usually get another 15 days after that initial dispute letter. Within 5 days of completing the investigation, they have to send you a written notice of the results. So what I find helpful is if I'm disputing something, I put it in my calendar for 30 days out saying, hey, this is who I sent it to. Here's what we were looking for. Did it get resolved? And that way at the end of 30 days, I know, oh, they haven't gotten back to me. And now they have to change it in my favor. Okay. If you're not getting through to them and you're not getting the help, or they're not following those rules, you can go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, this website on here, where we've also listed their phone number, and put in complaints and say, hey, they are not following the law on this. Now, if we're just getting back a dispute and they're not filing in their favor, we don't have any evidence to say other than we just didn't want it on there, CFPB is not going to really work with you. But if you're going and saying, hey, I put in the dispute, they've gone past 30 days, or I've provided this evidence and they're still not fixing it, then they're an area that has the ability to levy fines and create problems for these businesses and credit reporting agencies if they're not following the laws on here. So let's talk a little bit about credit scores. Okay. So what are credit scores? They're separate from the credit report. So the companies are required, Training Experian them are required to give you a credit report once a year at a minimum, but they do not have to give you a credit score. So what are credit scores? Well, credit scores are different than the credit reports. The top three have to give you copies of the credit reports. They do not have to give you copies of your scores. So the scores are kind of a proprietary formula that they use to try and predict how well you are going to be able to pay debt back, or how well you're using that debt. Again, think of it just like as a quick photograph of where you're at today and how likely are you to pay it back in the future. They do it so that it's an easy way to kind of compare people across large amounts and say, all right, person with a 700 score can probably be a better financial risk than somebody with a 500 credit score. The thing to understand is that each of those companies, because they're doing those scores differently, will come up with different numbers and different scales. So like one company, their top score might be 800. The other one, the top score might be 750. So it really just depends, and you have to make sure you understand when you look at that score, how that particular company rates it. A really good resource for this is a website called Credit Karma. So they will get you access to their credit reports. They'll give you, I think, 2 of the 3 scores, and then kind of tell you what's creating those scores, what's having the biggest impact, things like that. So Credit Karma is a really good resource to be able to use to get an understanding around that. Okay. So how are they calculated? They use all the information from the credit report to do that, but that's where they're pulling their data from. Now, again, everyone's a little bit different. Typically, what's going into what's driving that are 5 things. Okay. The type of credit used. So is it an installment loan versus a revolving line of credit, a credit card versus a car loan? How new is the credit? How long have you had it? The amount that you're owed, and the payment history. Payment history and amounts owed typically have the biggest impact on that. Good rule of thumb is for any line of like revolving credit, so like a credit card, you don't want to be using more than 30% of the account. Okay, so if I have a $10,000 limit on my credit card, at the end of the month, I don't want to carry a balance of more than $3,000. And I always want to make sure that I'm paying on time, because just one missed payment can have a big impact on my total score and what my interest rates and things like that are going to be like in the future. This graph kind of goes over and shows you what types of things tend to be really influential and which ones do not. So again, things like credit utilization, how much of the amounts that you're allowed to use versus how much you're using. So sometimes it's a good idea just to ask for an increase on a credit card, even if you don't have any intention of using it, because now you've lowered your credit utilization rate, which should theoretically increase your credit score number. How do I get access to these things? I've already mentioned Credit Karma as one good resource that will get you that. You are, by law, offered 1 free credit report every 12 months. So the way I typically remember to do this is I set it up in my calendar to remind me on my birthday to, hey, it's been 12 months, pull your credit report, take a look at it. You can also get a free report for a couple other things. If you've been unemployed, you plan on starting to look for a job, because we know credit reports will have an impact on employment. Employers will look at that. If you're receiving kind of public assistance, or if you believe that the credit file is inaccurate due to fraud, or you've had a fraud alert put on your credit file, then you'll have access to getting a free report to check on that. Or if you've had any adverse information or action taken against you, you've been denied a loan, denied a credit card, something like that, then in that case, you have 60 days and you can get a copy of that free report so that you can verify, was it accurate? Is there anything in there missing? Those types of things. All right. So when you do go to order this, they do have a single website that will allow you to get all 3 at the same time, and that is annualcreditreport.com. Okay. Now be ready. They are going to ask you some security questions, like where have you lived and things like that. So you'll need to be able to answer those questions with that credit report. If you don't want to go through that method, there's a phone number here, a phone up on here. You can order over the phone or by mail as well. Now, something you should be careful of is that there are a lot of imposter websites, and what they're doing is they're saying, hey, we'll get you the free report, and then they'll sign you up for credit monitoring. You don't really need the credit monitoring. You can do that yourself. You're pulling these that often. At least once a year minimum. That's enough to catch any mistakes or anything like that. And also, a lot of times, banks and stuff now are offering free credit monitoring as part of the accounts, because it's in their best interest to catch fraud as quickly as possible as well. So a lot of times your banks might even alert you if something happens. Now, for you that have kids under the age of 18, they should not have credit reports unless you have put them on any of your credit cards or loans as like a co-signer or as a joint authorized user. Kids, though, are a big target of identity fraud and identity theft. Here's the thing to understand. If it is truly identity theft and fraud, you are not responsible for paying any of that debt. Now, the companies might tell you that you are because they want to get their money back no matter what. But what the law says that if it is truly fraud, then you do not have to pay that back, assuming that you alert companies and tell them as soon as it happens. Now, unfortunately, most identity theft and fraud is not from some Nigerian prince scam that catches you. Although those do catch people. It's usually somebody that knows you and has access to a lot of your information. So most identity fraud, unfortunately, comes from family members. And so to get the protections against identity fraud and not having to pay that money back, if you do know that it's a family member, probably going to have to press charges against that family member to make that you are not responsible. You also have access to get these free credit scores if you apply for a mortgage loan and the lender uses your credit score, or if you get turned down. Those are some other exceptions to the 1 year period that you have within here. It's very important for you to be able to keep all of your documents together. I would keep copies, save copies of credit reports so that you can track them throughout the years, but other things that can help you with disputes. If something does come up, we've made a list here of important records to keep track of, and you can also write down where they're held at. I want to take the time today to say thank you for listening on this. If you do have questions or you want to go in more details, here's my contact information. Happy to chat, set some time, and help wherever possible. Have a great day.